Good afternoon, everyone. I believe we are live. Welcome to this Smart Company webinar all about technology to rock your business world. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steph. I'm the Startups and Tech Editor here at Smart Company. So as you can imagine, the kind of tech that would rock your business world comes up pretty often in my day-to-day. And over the past 18 months, it's been really interesting to see how businesses' technology needs have changed and how SMEs are using technology slightly differently, whether that's for things like invoice management or cash flow or improving their security or just like ramping up their systems a little bit. But I also know that when there are so many tech providers out there doing slightly different things, when you haven't approached a sort of tech enablement before, it can be pretty daunting to choose the right provider. We have an all-star lineup today who are going to offer you some insights into how to choose the technology that's right for you and right for your business at the stage your business is at. So first of all, we have Brendan Tanner, Head of Finance at McGrath Nicol. Hi, Brendan. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you.
Thank you, Steph.
Then we have Keith Payne, who is Senior Director and Head of Sales at SAP Concur in Australia and New Zealand. Great to have you, Keith.
Steph. Cheers.
Keith's actually joining us from hotel quarantine, so welcome. I hope this is a bright spot in your day.
It is indeed.
And last but not least, we have Raf Bender, who is CEO of Breathe Education. Hi, Raf. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
So just before we get started, a couple of housekeeping points. We will be running a poll during the session. It would be so great to have as many people involved as possible. The questions will just come up, just like answer however you feel, and we'll be discussing the results shortly afterwards. There will also be some time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, please pop them either in the Q&A box, which is just at the bottom of your screen there, or in the chat, which you can also open from the bottom there and it will just come up on your right. We're also keen to get any sort of comments and contributions throughout. So if you just have any thoughts on what we're talking about or anything any of the speakers say, do jot your thoughts down there, and might be something we can add into the discussion. So I think that's quite enough from me. Shall we get started? So first of all, I'm going to come to you, Keith. If we sort of start right at the beginning, when small businesses are looking to make an investment in technology, considering many of them don't have tons of time or money to spare, where should they start? Like, what are the very first things they should be thinking about?
Yeah, great question. And thanks to everybody for giving me the time to speak today. I think it's about building the usual sort of foundations that you would build with anything. For me, it's about systems of record, really, to start off with. So if you think about the sort of things you need to manage your customer and data around that. You need to manage your cash and the way that flows through your business. And you also need to be able to manage your employees and obviously all of the data that comes with transacting in the business that you're in. That's really the key to me. Moving on from that, I think you need to look at the way in which you want to consume the technology. So these days, do you really want to have servers in your own office, or do you want to consume through software as a service, a more transactional sort of scalable type way to consume the technology? And then the other thing you need to think about, I think, is called interoperability, which is when you're putting your foundations in place, you need to think about, do I want to build extensions or put extensions onto the technology? And that might be specific to your particular industry, but either way, you need to get data to flow through the various different systems. So it's the same as building a house, building anything, get the good foundations in place. And then I think the other interesting thing is how you're going to consume financially as well. So the big question here is, do you want to go out and use capital expenditure? Or do you want to actually consume using operational expenditure as well? So within those three sort of key areas, I think the crux of the matter here is being able to build some really solid foundations that are going to be able to support you from the start as your business grows.
And when you're talking about the foundations of that house, if we consider the sort of eventual house as being your total tech stack, like at what point do you need to consider what the whole thing will look like and what you need in that and what you don't?
Yeah, great question again. So there's some the core technologies that people tend to use these days are CRM, customer relationship management, and then an accounting software. Small businesses can consume accounting software online these days. There's lots of organizations that are out there like Xero or MYOB and other types of organizations. So small businesses can very, very quickly get control of their accounts and their bookkeeping and be able to pay things. I think that once you're able to manage your accounts, once you're able to manage your customers, it's then about managing all of the documents that you're actually pulling together. So, virtual filing cabinets really are the way forward as well. My advice would be when it goes to building your tech stack, there's a couple of things really. First of all, if you can focus on the pain point and the outcome, I think that that's something that will really help you drive which direction you go in once you build that foundation. The other thing I think that's quite important is if you can research what other organizations in your industry are using that are specific to them. I'm sure, Raf, you're going to talk a little bit about that with your organization. And then I think the other really important thing is look to build in stages so that you're partnering with an organization that has a defined customer journey and that you're able to invest in that customer journey. So for me, organizations that have a customer success team that are able to come to you would be something that I would be looking for when building my tech stack.
So sort of something that can provide like additional services as your business grows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the keys in today's business world is that account management is a very different thing to what it was before. Organizations are investing in customer success. So this is where they're actually bringing insights to you from your own usage and enabling you to make informed business decisions about how, when, and where you actually invest your tech spend.
Interesting. And then I think that's a good place for us to start this discussion as well. So Raf, I'm going to come to you next. I understand that Breathe Education pivoted during COVID to go fully online. Can you first of all talk us through a little bit about what your business is and what you do? And then what was that transition like? How did you figure out how and what tech to use at a time when you're presumably under quite a lot of pressure?
When COVID first hit Australia in March 2020, we were 17 team members full time, and we were an in-person training company. We certified people to become Pilates instructors. We were delivering training at bricks and mortar locations in 5 capital cities around Australia, and so we had people physically on the ground, doing those trainings. When we pivoted to online, that had been a real ambition of mine to actually run an online business for years, and I was just trying to figure out how to do it, and always had the assumption that what I did couldn't be done online. And then I think, like many of us, we reassessed, what could and couldn't be done online over the last year. And so what we did was I imagine many of the people on this call now are entrepreneurs, and thus, when we see a crisis, we see an opportunity on the flip side of that. And so I think in every time of great change, there's great opportunity, and I saw that as an opportunity. And so we did 2 things. We shut down for 3 weeks, and we gave ourselves 3 weeks to make 100% conversion to become an 100% online training business. And we voraciously researched, and we did it in 2 ways. We looked at actual academic research on online education, systematic reviews, etc. And we also looked at organisations that had, glowing reviews for their online education. We looked at Harvard, we looked at Stanford, we looked at a place called General Assembly that teaches coding online, and these, in diverse industries. And we just looked at, we enrolled in their courses, and we paid the enrollment fee, and we just thought, what are these people doing? What systems are they using? We read their blogs, or, we grilled their customer service people, and we actually ended up basically just copying General Assembly's model in terms of their tech stack. They use Zoom, they use Slack, and the way they integrated it, and a bunch of other softwares they integrated, and then just voracious, and I imagine, again, a lot of people on the call being entrepreneurs, once you get a bee in your bonnet about something, you go at it, and you don't stop until you until you achieve it. And so I was just on YouTube 14 hours a day looking at people who are doing online education on YouTube. And because there's people making millions of dollars on YouTube teaching how to use Photoshop or how to do whatever. And I looked at what equipment were they using, what cameras were they using, what lighting were they using, etc. And I just consumed all of that stuff. And basically within 3 weeks, within our company, we made decisions about, which softwares to use and which cameras to use. And we just invested. And we were very, very lucky at the start of COVID. We had cash in the bank. We had, the ability to make that change.
Mm. And sort of throughout that process, I guess, are there any major lessons that you could pick out to pass on to other small business owners on a similar journey? Like, was there any mistakes you made that now you wouldn't make again?
Freaking heaps. And continue to do so. So I would say the biggest thing, the two biggest things are, for us, we weren't a technology business. We teach people a physical skill, in movement science. And so technology wasn't our core expertise. So we needed to get expert at it real quick, but we also needed a tech that wouldn't be, minimize the chance of user error and that would be reliable. And so we went for stuff that was off-the-shelf solutions wherever possible. We went for big brand names with, wide. We looked at integrations was a huge thing for us. If we looked at, a software, does it integrate with our accounts management? Does it integrate with our CRM? Does it integrate with our email? Does it integrate with our dashboards? And so we wanted to be able to integrate all of these things. And we looked at their customer service. Like being in Australia, most of these companies are US based. Some of them are Europe based, and Europe is just a terrible time conversion from when we are. It's literally 12 hours apart. And so you have to get up at, 9 p.m. to talk to the customer service people. And so having 24/7 online customer service chat was a deal, was an absolute must have for us. Mm. So that would be the first thing is really just, we went for off the shelf, widely compatible things with a good customer service. So we use WordPress for our website that has a gazillion plugins that, just work for it. And the second thing is, I would say, and I've learned this the hard way because I've bought, the company has bought way more stuff than we needed and ended up throwing out tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment that wasn't right for purpose. But when you move fast, that's what happens. But start with the goal, the outcome, right? So rather than thinking like, oh, here's a cool bit of tech, there's a cool camera, or there's a cool bit of software or whatever. Oh, how could we use that in our business? Think like, what are we trying to achieve? What's the goal of the business? Okay, we want certain profit goals, certain revenue goals, certain customer satisfaction goals, certain growth goals. What's our best lever to achieve that? And sometimes it's not actually tech, right? Sometimes it's someone on Upwork with a spreadsheet, and that's better than paying a $150,000 a year developer to integrate two bits of software that don't want to talk to each other. It's just better to have someone, copy and paste the spreadsheet every day. so start with the goal, not the tech.
Yeah, that's good advice, I think. And Brendan, McGrath Nicol is a very different type of business, but also recently went through a digital transformation. I guess, can you talk us through what that process was like for you and how you landed on the right technology and the right providers?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Steph. Really, really interesting observations so far from Keith and Raf too. I love the piece about the goal in mind. That is absolutely critical and does underpin a lot of what we did. Look, our experience, our firm is an interesting one. You sort of mentioned we're a little bit different. We're probably a little bit larger than what most of the listeners today are. But I think despite the size, some of those fundamentals and learning it through choosing your tech or choosing your tech stack resonate regardless of size, some of those core fundamentals. So we are an accounting and advisory firm, but non-traditional. So we do things like forensic accounting, we do forensic investigation, cyber advice, some insolvency and restructuring work. So we're not the business services provider, the bookkeepers, the audit and tax guys. So a little bit different, but what that's done is it's given us, I guess, an independent space in the world, and it's also meant that we've kind of had to carve out our own journey. And I say that having not been at the firm through its entire journey, but the history of the firm. It's always had a pretty fulsome tech stack. So even when it first formed, there was sort of around 100 staff back in the mid-2000s. It had things like the financial management system that Keith refers to, the ERP, it's got a CRM, it's got its own payroll system, all of that sort of good stuff. But it was all hosted in-house. So IT infrastructure, big IT infrastructure to make all that work, a lot of servers, a lot of investment, a lot of maintenance, which that's fine. That's what kind of everyone did in the 2000s. But you start to step forward and you realize as an organization that that's not your expertise. Our expertise is we're very good at advising corporates on how to solve their problems. We're not actually the greatest, IT manager. So some of those things started to come to a head in the middle of last decade, and that really kicked off the digitization journey for McGrath-Nicol. It didn't start necessarily with a big bang. We have to completely overhaul everything. It's ended up being quite frankly, it's almost become part of BAU. But it's been a multi-year process that, as a number of trigger points have come around, it's moved us into the next step. So we've replaced our ERP, so our core financial management, moved that to a cloud-based service, software as a service solution, as Keith referenced earlier. We've just gone live with our cloud-based CRM. So having moved from an old on-premise version. Expense AP management tools were in there as well. So moving all of that to a cloud-based version. And what those trigger points have done is, in each case, fit into a broader digitization plan that the firm kicked off around about 2015, 2016. That included moving all of the paper-based, customer advice files into, online collaboration sites. We use SharePoint servers, and more recently, a lot of it moving into Microsoft Teams, which is great collaboration tool, I think, quite frankly, regardless of your size. But the way we went about it, Steph, in each case, there was a lot of due diligence done. So we were, again, fortunate, cash in the bank, similar to Raf's situation, but probably with the benefit of time in each case. So we're able to work through it a bit systematically, have a look at a number of vendors in a bit of detail. So as Raf alluded to, you don't just pick the best looking or the kind of sexiest tool that maybe first presents itself, but actually doing a broad market scan, talk to some tech experts. So, we're all here, we can talk to our tools today, but there are others out there who that's their entire life. And getting some of that independent input really helped us, particularly with some of our HR tools more recently. So independent advice that we sought. We obviously worked through a business case, the financial due diligence, which is right in my wheelhouse. But underpinning all of that was the goal in mind, and that was to improve the experience of our employees in the first instance. Better experiences for our staff, and probably a broad generalization, tends to lead to better experiences for your customers. And we had paper-based, inefficient, just difficult processes to work with. In each case, employee in mind, a lot of workshopping with staff, a lot of workshopping with customers as well to work towards that goal. And look, competitive pitch processes with the bigger tech implementations, but a lot of research, a lot of due diligence before we make that call is how we've gone about it. Look, pleasingly for us, it's worked out pretty well so far. And we've removed a lot of bottlenecks and a lot of inefficiencies with the tech providers that we've gone with. And I'll probably just a final observation there. We haven't ended up with a single provider, a single kind of stack provider. we've gone with, in most cases, a best in breed type approach. Probably, we've had the size and scale to be able to go down that path. But being able to go down the best in breed path takes you back to integration being the key, which I'll come back to Raf's point there. Integration just becomes so important. But once you're at that point, you get the best of each piece of tech that's available for your business, but it's able to work together seamlessly, which just goes back to the employee experience as the key piece for us.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that, that what you're doing is trying to improve your employees' lives, because anything that helps them be more efficient helps the whole business be more efficient. I feel like often the focus is on the customer, as it should be a lot of the time, but there is, something to be said for focusing on the people within the business as well. So I'm just going to launch the poll now. There are a few questions on, sorry, I've lost the button. Just one moment. There it is. A few questions on the kind of tech you're looking for, the sort of features you're looking for, a couple of other bits and bobs. You should all be able to see that now. So while that's running, I'm just going to do sort of a quick whip round to ask each of our panelists, what's your top tech picks for SMEs? So maybe I'll come to you first, Raf. On all of the different techs that you've tried, what would be your sort of best recommendation?
We've been going since we were 4 team members and $250,000 a year in revenue. We're now 35 team members and $5.5 million in revenue. And so it's really hard to pick, just one or two, because like Brendan said, it's all integrated, and the integration really is the value. I would say we use probably the top few that we use are Keep, which used to be Infusionsoft. That's our CRM. That does all of our marketing, manages our customer data, and our sales workflow and our customer service workflow. So Keep, we love it. They're based in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's rock solid. It just works, and it's really easy to use. Second one is we use Xero for accounting, and I love Xero because it integrates. It's cloud-based. Our accountant can get our bank feeds in real time, our sales data from Stripe in real time, like everything just reconciles at the touch of a button, so it's fantastic. We use Front. We use the Google Suite, so basically Google Apps. We get some Gmail and Google Drive and a whole bunch of calendar functionality and stuff, and we have the business level version of that, which lets us to do a whole lot of analytics around how long people take to answer emails and that kind of thing. And we use Slack. I think can't go past without mention, and obviously Zoom. I mean, if you're in business these days, you're on Zoom, I think. But I think Slack has been really a game changer for us. We're now a 100% distributed workforce. Everyone works from home. There is no office. We have people in 5 continents, 8 time zones. So that employee integration and customer integration is and community is huge for us in maintaining morale and cohesion. So I think Slack probably gets my top upvote for all of that.
Okay. And Brandon, what about you?
So similar to Raf, there's a range that could talk to as being absolutely critical to the business. I think the last 18 months since the pandemic first struck, in terms of critical impact on the business and ability to continue to run the business as is, Microsoft Teams. So prior to the pandemic, we were using it just prior to the pandemic, but not long. Everyone had desk phones. Everyone had McGrath-Nickel mobile phones. Everyone had we had Zoom as an option as well. We were using Skype for internal sort of message carrying at that point in time. We had conference calling providers. Communications was just a range of different things that under Teams, everything's been able to come together as one. There are no desk phones left. Everything is just consolidated through there. That's on the communication side. But the other great thing that we've found with Teams is a lot of the collaboration on documentation. and the like, secure team sites. If you're working on confidential customer projects and the like, which often can be the case with some of our work, a great platform to be able to collaborate, communicate seamlessly while working from home. Really proved to be a key piece for us. I could talk about all of the financial management tools as being critical. They're absolutely critical to me, but for the broader business, that communications and collaboration software that Microsoft Teams has offered, I think has been critical. And look, as a tool, it can scale from smaller sized organisations right up to the biggest of the big.
Awesome. And how about you, Keith? What would you add to that?
Yeah, look, some really interesting comments. There's technologies that are post-pandemic that we would never heard of before that are now part of our everyday conversation. But what I actually did want to do was just call out something that Brendan said, which was around his organisation have used technology to digitally transform their business. But a lot of the organisations that we're talking to in this session at the moment will be born digital. So there is no transformation to take place in the first place. So as an organisation that's born digital, it's the norm for you from day one. And when it comes to the sort of technology that I've seen have the biggest impact, other than the communication piece and the collaboration piece, I would be more focused on what sits in the back end to complement some of those systems of record and workflow systems. And I'm kind of biased based on the fact that I work for SAP Concur, but prior to being in sales, I was their head of customer success. So I've seen hundreds and hundreds of organizations be able to scale and grow by using technology that's helping them to have a single view of all of their spend within the business, quite often before the spend has even happened. And if you are going to grow your organization and you do have plans to diversify, having a view of that cash and being able to manage it is absolutely vital. So I think that across the panel here, we've seen some great communication collaboration pieces. And then what supports that in the back end is back to good old fashioned financial cash management. And so systems like that would be something I'd be looking into.
That's really interesting. And I do think that definitely a lot of our readers, and I would imagine a lot of the people viewing today would be looking for technology in order to help them grow. So having something in place that will kind of give them visibility of that is probably pretty important. So I'm going to end the poll now, and you should all be able to see the results. Can you all see that? Awesome. So in terms of the first question around how people decide which tech to invest in, word of mouth and testing various options with free trials have come out just very slightly actually ahead of good online reviews. And then people are, again, a pretty even spread for the next question around, well, great tech support sort of edging ahead again. I guess like any surprises there? Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
I personally think that buying or procurement through businesses has never been as similar as buying and procuring for what you would at home for your home services as well. So emotional buying, recommendations, all of those things that we use to buy our household or day-to-day life stuff move into the workplace. It's just that, you get a few extra set of eyes to look at it and to work out whether or not that's the right thing for your organization. So it doesn't surprise me that would align to very much the way that I would go out and buy a new TV or a new sofa.
I'd like to add there that, and this is a clanger of a mistake that we made, that we used word of mouth to choose our booking system. So we have something like 700 students currently enrolled right around the world, multiple time zones, and we have multiple classes that they attend each week. And so they need to self-manage their bookings, and we need to be able to track that. So it's quite a complex use case that we have. And we went with, there's a large franchise chain of Pilates studios in Australia that has, we thought, they're kind of doing the same thing, except they're doing it in person. They use this software, so we'll go with that. And we bought it. It's like, it's good enough for them. And then we implemented it, and oh God, it was such a hassle to implement it. Took, months of our team development time, so many bugs, and eventually we figured out the problem was it didn't suit our use case. Their use case was meaningfully different to our use case. And it's like, all right, if you train like Michael Jordan, it doesn't make you Michael Jordan, like you need to train for yourself. So I think, if you're taking word of mouth advice from people, really check that they're using the tech to achieve the same goals that you want to achieve, and they're starting from the same point that you're starting from. Because if it's working for National Australia Bank, doesn't mean it's going to work for your business.
And I suppose that goes for online reviews as well. Like, you want to get reviews from people who are in the same boat as you. Brendan, and any thoughts on any of these poll results?
I think my observation looking through there, well, maybe most of it came through maybe as expected. It was probably good to see that, just selecting the cheapest option is probably not the way to go, that it is a range of different views to get your feedback, talking to the experts. I like the fact that ease of use came through with a reasonable score under the tech investment question as well. And that goes to, I guess, where a lot of my commentary so far has come from around, making it easy for our staff and for the people connected with our firm to work with the tech, whether you're a customer, whether you're an employee. So I think that's critical. And I was also probably pleased to see that for those that are looking at the financial management side, that they are, looking at both, expense and kind of accounts payable, invoice management. I think the two do go hand in hand, and we've certainly found having a unified approach or a unified piece of software in that space is certainly a good way to go.
Yeah, 100%. And then just sort of the final question we haven't talked about is that the key consideration for new technology investment is very much around improving business efficiency and getting more done with less, which I think sort of speaks to the idea of growth again and trying to get the most efficient way forward.
Absolutely, Steph. I think if our tech investment sort of strategy over the years, and look, as we've grown with it, it's anything to go by. You pick the right technology, and the business can scale with it, as opposed to having to continually add more headcount to manage inefficient processes. The software and the tools you pick are going to help you grow with the tech rather than with a different form of investment.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to add to that, and this is just my unique experience because I don't have a tech background, although I love the stuff, that because we've grown very fast and we've adapted very fast, and also in our industry, which is now online training, the goalposts have changed, or the expectation of quality has evolved. So what was acceptable a year ago is now not acceptable to people in terms of video and audio quality and how fast the recording's available online afterwards and all of those things. So we've had to, set a standard and then 3 months later go, we need to raise the standard. And so inherently that process has been wasteful. We've tried stuff that didn't work. We've tried stuff that was overkill. We've hired someone, we hired the wrong role. We realized we didn't need that role. We needed a different role, so I think if your goal is to scale quickly and you're adding technology, like there's lots of additional complexity there, and that's going to involve making mistakes, and you're going to burn through a bit of cash. And so if your business is not in a position to do that, and take a much more measured approach like Brendan outlined, and measure twice and cut once.
Yeah, so my next question sort of maybe speaks to those comments a little bit. I was going to say both for you, Raf, and you, Brendan, if you think back to the beginning of your respective businesses' tech transformation, how would you have answered those poll questions, and would you have been right? Like, what would you have changed in hindsight in the way that you approach that?
So how would we have sort of answered some of them? Look, I'll maybe jump around the questions a little bit, but if I think to the question around expense and invoice, we would have answered, well, we did answer both. Would I still answer both now? Yep, I would. So nothing would change there. We're very happy with, I don't think I've actually said Concur, but we use Concur for those particular processes. So we're very, very happy with what we've got there. How would we go about deciding on it? We did a lot of market scanning and did talk to a lot of people, and I think that goes to probably a number of the poll answers there. The way we went about it, I think, would still stay fairly similar. And in terms of then that key feature, it would still go to ease of use. I think having our employee, again, the users who touch it, whether employees or customers, still having them in mind as the primary driver around our, where we were looking to go with this from a goal point of view, would still be the same. I don't think that approach hasn't resulted in an end position or an end product that has been a failure because we've taken that approach and then implemented it. So probably in a fortunate position that, as Raf said, we've been able to measure probably 2, 3, 5 times and then cut once to be able to have the time to do it a little bit more systematically, as opposed to maybe being forced on you and being a little bit more time critical, that we've been able to probably come to the solutions we wanted to from the outset.
And Raf, you've already mentioned you sort of didn't have that luxury of time. Like, do you think your priorities were right from the outset, or would you do anything differently today?
I'm not really a big one for regrets. Like most entrepreneurs, I think I'm very forward-looking, and so I think, we made heaps of mistakes, and if I actually could go back and undo those decisions, sure, save a few $100,000, that'd be great, but like those mistakes were a necessary, part of my education in learning, what not to do. Like, signing up for a phone forwarding service by some beta startup based in Eastern Poland, and then realising later that it was just one guy in his garage and he hadn't completed writing the software yet. And it's like, it was terribly buggy and it was just terrible. We integrated with our WordPress site and crashed the site. There was all these mistakes that we made. It's like, in hindsight, okay, I know not to make that mistake again now, so that's why we only go with name brands with lots of references and integrations and things now. But I think, when you're growing, and particularly if you're not in it, and as the tech landscape is evolving, I feel like most of the time I don't know what I don't know, and I think, we're a tech, now we're a tech company, like we're an online company. We need developers. So I go out and hire a couple of developers, and they're awesome developers, but I didn't know that there was different kinds of developers. There's back-end developers, front-end developers, full-stack developers, WordPress developers, designer developers. I just like developers a developer to me, like they all code with the black screen and green writing. I thought, how hard can it be? So now I've got this team of developers and they're amazing, but there's no one doing the front end, right? So it's still me in this $5.5 million company with 35 team members. It's still me some of the time getting up and changing the copy on the website or something, and that's my fault because we didn't know what even roles to hire for or what softwares we needed, and we couldn't imagine what it would be like in the future that, later on we're going to need this. And so therefore this has to be scalable. We didn't even know to ask the right questions. So I think, hiring somebody, if you're growing, hiring somebody who has been through that journey of growing. So if you're at, X revenue and you want to get to Y revenue, well, hire someone who's been on the journey from X to Y recently, preferably in your industry, and who's made all those mistakes. Like if you hired me in your company, I'm not looking for a job, but if you hired me in your company, I guarantee you won't be signing up for any Polish chatbot, apps. So that's one mistake I can save you from. So hire someone who's been there, done that, or get someone to mentor you who's been there, done that, who doesn't have a vested interest in you using one software or another. I think Keith mentioned it before, someone who's an independent, advisor who's not got a stake in what decision you make, except for they want you to succeed.
Raf, it's quite interesting that you should say that, because I was actually going to say before, it's very difficult to buy the wrong technology. I mean, you said you've given it a good go there. But in actual fact, in a lot of instances, it's choosing the right partner that makes the difference here, and having trust in an organization that they actually genuinely are curious about your organization, and that they're patient enough to help you build blocks within your organization. So, we know that when an organization presents itself to sell you software or services, you're talking to a salesperson who is probably trying to sell as much as they possibly can. But to you, we've spoken about this before, it's really about, what do I actually need at this moment in time? And can I trust that that organization has got my back to be able to come to me with actionable insights that's going to enable me to then be able to tweak and fine tune what I've got in place? I'll give you an example. We spoke about customer success before, but a prime example is with SAP Concur. We actually have a host of data on the usage of the system that the customers themselves don't get access to. And so having a regular business review actually enables our customers to see benchmarks against spend of other organizations in their field. So for instance, if there's 100 organizations that are in professional services, we're able to amalgamate all that data together to be able to show them as an insight, you're actually spending $50 a night more than most organizations in your sector on hotels. And that gives you an opportunity to then take a business decision or create a policy around what it is that you need to do to help your business grow. And that could be the same as hire cars, taxis, and all of those sorts of things as well. So it transcends the technology. The technology is collecting all of the data. It's about having an organization that is prepared to come to you with the insights so that you can not buy more technology, but actually make some informed business decisions that's going to have an impact on your spend and profitability.
Yeah.
So we're starting to run out of time a little bit, and I do want to leave time for some questions from the audience. We've had a few coming through. So just before we head to questions, I want to do sort of another kind of whip round, and I'm basically asking you to sort of really condense some of the things you've already spoken about. So is there a golden rule when it comes to choosing tech for your business? And if so, what is it? And if not, what's sort of the closest top tip you have to offer? Maybe I'll come to Keith on that first.
Yeah, look, there is no silver bullet here. I'll just say one thing. Make sure it gives you the outcome that you're looking for, and make sure that it's got the ability to scale with your business. The last thing that you want to be doing is keep investing in technology due to the size of your organization and the complexity. So get involved with an organization who knows how to grow businesses and can grow with you. And, most organizations that are in software as a service are delivering enterprise grade technology to you. And if you consume that on a transactional basis, it should be a technology that actually sees you through for many, many, many years.
Good advice. And Brendan, what about you?
Yeah, look, similar to Keith, there is no single response, right? But I think probably the things I've touched on so far boil it down to two things. Do your research, which I think has been a theme from Raf and Keith as well, and make your choice with your users, whether that be employees, customers, and the like, in mind. Don't just pick the first thing that pops up. Research with your users in mind.
Very good advice again. And Raf, finally, any golden rule?
Well, I totally endorse both statements by Brendan and Keith. I would say that the really big one for us that has been unexpected, like almost everything for me in the last year and a half, is that every technology has a a drag factor on, like, requires upkeep, So, I talked, the number one software I said that we use is Keep for our CRM, and that has really enabled us to scale our marketing massively. It's been hugely pivotal in our growth. But we now require a full-time employee to run that, So these things come at a cost, and if you want it to work first time every time, you have to have someone there to make sure it works first time every time. And whether that be your accounting software or your CRM or your website or whatever it might be, I think don't discount or don't assume that you've got this amazing thing. You just press a button and it'll make all your dreams come true.
Awesome. That's all very helpful nuggets of wisdom, I think. So a couple of questions that have come through from the audience. First of all, do you have any advice for time management software for a scaling business? This person is currently operating in one state, but planning on expanding throughout Australia within the next 5 years and deploying team members to multiple states. And they're just looking for advice on time management solutions. Any thoughts?
When you talk about time management, you're talking about managing people's calendars, because one of the things that we've actually seen our client success team use is plugins like, I think it's called Calendly, whereby it's actually down to the person who wants the appointment to actually have access to the diary immediately, so that it speeds up the ability to be able to make appointments. You're nodding your head there, Raf. You might know a little bit more about that than me, but it solves a heap of problems when it comes to scheduling people's time. It's almost like on a self-service perspective, and that's something that has worked really, really well with our client success people who look after a lot of customers, but they're able to then get the FaceTime with the customers who really want them and need to interact with them.
Yeah, we use Acuity, which is basically very similar to Calendly. Appointment Core is another one, and it's fantastic. It just, instead of going back and forth, let's have a meeting, is Tuesday good for you? Hold on, is that Wednesday my time? You just shoot them a link and go, hey, book in a time that suits you, and bam, they book in a time that suits them. In terms, if you're talking, I'm not sure on the meaning of the question, the context. If you're thinking more about productivity management than time management, like, what are people spending their time on in the organisation? We use two things. The first one is Asana, which is a project management software, and we just have boards there that people have their priorities, and we have a shared board. And the second thing is it's not a software, it's a process that we just have really clear outcomes that people are responsible for, and we agree on what is the outcome, when is the outcome going to happen, and the outcome is quantified, and then what happens if we don't hit the outcome. And so then we have that's how we manage time. We don't have people clock on or clock off.
Mm-hmm. Maybe this next question is one for you, Brendan. Well, first of all, have you found and have you experienced any staff resistance to technological change or the speed of change? And if so, how have you tackled that?
So I think if anyone is able to answer that question, that they have not run into resistance, then they've done extraordinarily well. We could write a book on this with our experiences. So yes, lots of resistance at different points interestingly from different groups. So with our big ERP move to the cloud, we overhauled a whole series of processes. So we took the opportunity of not just take existing not so good process and put it in the cloud. That's not ultimately going to help anyone longer term. We did change things along the way. Whole range of pushback, and we look back at that. We didn't really nail the change management process there. And it's probably one of the key learnings we came away from that project is we need to invest more in our change management sort of programs for further tech changes that we've done. And our recent CRM launch was a great example of where we invested heavily, and we've had much less pushback on that one as compared with the ERP. How did we deal with it once we did get the pushback? That was then, okay, well, it's reacting to any issue that you're confronted with, reassess what needs to be done, new training programs, new video-based guidance to try and appeal to the different groups. But we actually found in that case that most people wanted more face-to-face training. Go figure that the millennial type style approach to change management didn't quite work. We needed to actually roll out some face-to-face training sessions for our staff. So again, listen to your users and respond to your users, but in a change management context in that one.
Brendan, we've spoken about this before, but getting your stakeholders involved in the process quite early also actually helps. One of the biggest challenges that we find when we do AP automation is that accounts payable is a process that's probably been the same since the day dot. And, it's often paper-based. It's often something that somebody is very wedded to. And, when you bring technology in to automate some of these processes, a big mistake can be made where you're effectively trying to replicate the process inside a piece of technology, as opposed to looking at what the technology can do to improve that process. And so, early engagement for people is really important when that process in itself or that function of the business is very important to them as well. So big lesson learned there.
I'd just like to ask, sorry, go Brendan.
I was just going to say absolutely agree with those points, Keith. And I should differentiate that our pushback was around the broader ERP, the actual take up and user experience change management piece with Concur. I couldn't be happier with when it comes to our AP process. So I should just caveat that, given we've got Keith from Concur on the webinar here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about not replicating your existing system and just within automation, but asking what are we trying to actually achieve here? And is there a different process that might work better? I think I'd just like to say for those, starting with a small organisation or maybe you're a solopreneur right now and you think you're growing, it starts with hiring. And early on we had massive resistance to change, and we realised that's because we'd hired people who didn't like change. And so now our hiring process emphasises that there's no illusion in our business that there's some magical future date where we'll reach a steady state and all changes will be over and it'll be like, oh, now we've arrived. It's like, no, change is what you're signing up for. If you like change, if you love change, if you're an agent of change, come play with us, And if that's not your cup of tea, fine, this place is not going to suit you.
That's really interesting, setting expectations from the get-go. So we've got time for a few more questions. Another one has come through. How do you prioritize matters of security and privacy in all of this? How important is that? Maybe Raf, this must be sort of pertinent to you.
I really try not to worry about that stuff, so I try and outsource it as much as possible. So, for instance, all of our credit card information is stored by Stripe, which is our payment processing gateway. We don't ever have people's credit card details, stuff like that. So we basically get the end user to put their information into the system, which is not our system, it's a third-party system. So, yeah, in that sense, there's this new GDPR, I think that's the right acronym, in Europe that we now got to understand how that works. I don't have really the foggiest idea of what it's all about, but I know it's something to do with privacy and information and getting permission to market to people and stuff. So, yeah, I think there's we have somebody on that who is aware of that. We actually have an in-house legal counsel who is part-time and her job is to become aware of risks and de-risk them for us. And obviously we've got privacy policies and all the rest of it. But we really try. I mean, I really try not to have that be part of my daily consciousness.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry.
Just on that point, I know a little bit about GDPR to be dangerous, nothing more than that. But what I do know is that organizations that actually are responsible for your own private and personal data actually have to publish any breaches that are involved with that. So it's actually never been more secure to have your technology in the cloud, based on the fact that the transparency that exists by law when these breaches occur is as good as it's ever been.
And Keith, is that sort of a question that comes up often among the businesses that you work with?
Yeah, 100%. So, if we talk about legal practices or we talk about medical practices, they're really concerned about the data sovereignty and where it goes. And they're actually bound by laws of their own industries as well. So it's a topic of conversation that happens fairly regularly. Thankfully, it's not a showstopper. But for a global organization like SAP Concur, working across multiple jurisdictions with data centers dotted around the globe, naturally people want to know what's happening to their data, where it is, and who else can access it. So they're all very valid questions. And unless you're met with the level of transparency that you're comfortable with, then you need to, probably look somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. And then, Brendan, coming from sort of a bigger organization, do you have any thoughts on the sort of security and privacy stuff and best practices?
Yep. So a little bit along the lines of what Raf's said. So a big part of moving a number of our core platforms to the cloud, effectively putting that data into a software as a service provider's kind of not ownership, but under their carriage, under their care. A big part of it sits around that security piece. That is what they do, and because that's what they do, they're better at it than what we as a small organisation ever could be. We sort of alluded to, or we move forward with the way we used to do things. We'd just have this explosion of data that we'd be responsible for sitting on servers in server rooms in our offices, and just not the best way to do it. So it is absolutely front of mind for us, and we deal with market sensitive information every day. So having those sorts of systems securely held by reliable providers. So again, doing your due diligence around the providers. SAP Concur is one of them. Is definitely front of mind, and I think if I look around our firm, it's something that we've had to invest in the people side a little bit. To Raf's point before, we've actually got a dedicated information security resource within our firm now. It's become that important to us.
Awesome. It's like, I think it is something that people are really taking seriously and making high priority at the moment. We've got a couple of minutes. I've probably got time just for one more question. So this probably also applies to all of you, but maybe I'll come to Keith first in terms of sort of best practice again. How often should you be assessing your tech and your providers, and what's the best way to sort of check in and make sure that you're keeping up with all the latest developments and not sort of falling behind technically?
I've got quite a modern view on that. I think that it's however long that you're receiving a good level of perceived value from that vendor. So, are they developing their technologies in line with what's going on with your industry? Are they the ones that are coming to you with the problems that you've got before you even know their problems? They're the sorts of things that signify to me that you're in safe hands. And so, the concept of, I mentioned before, of customer success is all about doing great things together. And if your vendors aren't wanting to do that with you, then again, maybe that's something you need to give them a call and just ask what programs they've got in place to get into a business improvement initiative with them.
Mm-hmm. And any thoughts from, we're sort of in our last minute now, but any other thoughts on sort of how often you should make that assessment or whether it should be up to you at all?
Yeah, I've got two criteria that I use. And so we have back-end softwares like, for instance, Stripe, our payment gateway. And for us, that just works. Like, it always works. It's 100% uptime. There's never a problem with it. We never think about it. The money's in the bank. And so we're never going to reassess that unless it stops working at some point. And then we have our front-end software that our users interact with or that our staff interacts with. And so the key indicator for me that we need to rethink our software stack is when we notice people doing weird manual workarounds for things because they can't achieve what they're trying to achieve. And you're going, why are you copying and pasting this and posting it in this other thing? It's like, oh, the software doesn't do this. So, when users are asking, oh, how do I access A, B, and C? And you're like, oh, they should be able to figure that out, but obviously the software's not giving them the option in a way that makes sense to them. So those are the indicators for us that we need to rethink.
Mm-hmm. Really good point. Brendan, anything to add to that?
I'd just say no set time frame to review, but there's probably a constancy about it to continue to be aware of what's out there. Again, Raf alluded to it earlier that, tech does develop. If you're working with a piece of tech that you're noticing is not developing, you need to be across what else is happening out there so that you can maybe be proactive about it and look at the alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, that's definitely all we have time for. But thank you so much to everyone that's tuned in and listened. I hope it's been helpful and we've given you some good insights and some good advice. The session is going to be available online. I believe it will be finding its way to your inboxes. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. That was definitely a really insightful, in-depth discussion. And I learned a lot, so I hope everyone else did too. So let's give everyone a big virtual round of applause. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you, Steph.
Thanks, Steph.